There we go. Does L&D have a future? Great job by Joyce. Wasn't that fantastic? Wasn't that really interesting? Fantastic, packed full of useful information based on experience, talking about the self-efficacy of teachers and hopefully of the people we teach as well, and also, of course, then looking at the future and where we can go with the future with that, which is great. But I have no sympathy with Joyce and her self-acclaimed long ways of travelling. It's all very well coming from Australia on the plane. I was travelling from North Norfolk by train yesterday, which took me 8 hours, several changes, as a result of which I didn't see what was happening yesterday. But fortunately, Joyce did a great job of summarising what was taking place. And I think that's one part of the wrap-up keynote. I mean, as Steve said, I do 3 conferences a year. I think one of the other things for wrap-up keynote is to look at the future and just give a moment for reflection and perhaps even issue a challenge for what's going on. So that's one of the things which I'm aiming to do as well. Sorry, I just want to check. Is this on for the audio feed? We're good. Okay. Sorry, I chair conferences. If I stand here and I'm talking for 45 minutes and then it don't capture it for live streaming, I'm going to look like a complete numpty, aren't I? So I've got to make sure the tech side of things is sorted out. My background, Steve alluded to the fact that I do a lot of stuff in learning and development in the workplace, and I do. And I've been involved pretty much in learning and development all my adult life. I started as a computer programmer directly after I left school. I went on to do training. I'll tell you about it in a second. Since I started training in 1987, I've been a trainer, sales guy, marketing guy. I've been on the board of directors. I've set companies up and I've sold them. And currently I chair the Learning and Performance Institute, which is a body for people in the training or the workplace learning and development profession, trying to make sure that we raise our standards so that we are working to a coherent set of standards internationally, but at the same time without being some sort of ghastly 19th century institute that forces people to jump through hoops. So we're very much into the idea of crowdsourcing stuff and making sure that people are working together to set a common standard, rather than us being at the core trying to influence everything and set barriers to people from the middle of smoke-filled rooms. In terms of identity, I know that was a big topic the other day. I am Donald H. Taylor. So if you want to reach me, as Steve was saying on Twitter, Google me. I'm Donald H. Taylor. Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, Gmail, and on the web, it's donaldhtaylor.everything, and that's where I am. That's, of course, my, what's it called, the exact name, my exact name, digital identity. That's because in 2000, when I started off trying to get online and be part of the social world as it was then, even then, Donald Taylor, it was all gone. To find out what the H stands for, you have to get me very drunk in a bar one evening, and I will tell you. But I don't think I can keep up with you, Steve. I've seen the photographs. But the other reason, of course, I can't call myself Don is that when I started teaching in Turkey in 1987, I stood up in front of the class, and it was a class of complete beginners. I was teaching them English as a foreign language, and I stood up and said, in Turkish, Günaydın ben Don, which I thought meant, good morning, I am Don, but that in fact means, hello, I am underpants. And it's not even a particularly nice word for underpants, so I've stuck with Donald ever since. If you want to get in touch, and please do stay in touch, because these things are increasingly about continuity, let's do it through these various media, okay? I don't have a ukulele, but I do, and this is not deliberate, but I do usually travel with a book of poetry. So if we want to share something about ourselves before we get cracking, I always travel with a book of poetry. I have it with me here today. I pulled that out of my bag. I have an anthology of modern verse, 1920 to 1940. Strangely, the poem I'm reading at the moment is quite apt. It's W.B. Yeats' The Second Coming, and it contains that phrase, the falcon cannot hear the falconer, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. And I think that is how we feel a bit at the moment sometimes, like we're in the middle of a centrifugal force or a Wurlitzer. We're being thrown off in all directions. What's going on? And that's the driver behind this title. Does L&D have a future? Well, in my field, which is learning and development in the workplace, yeah, of course it has a future. In academia, certainly it has a future. Undoubtedly, people will continue to learn and develop. We're human beings, of course we will. Perhaps the title shouldn't be, does L&D have a future, but do we have a future? Because whether we like it or not, people are going to keep learning. Damn them. They will learn despite us. But what role are we going to play in that in the future? That's what I'd like to look at. perhaps slightly challengingly, perhaps a bit from the point of view of the learning and development side rather than the academic side, and then perhaps we'll have a bunch of questions and share some stuff at the end with the panel. But that's enough talking from me. And I've explained something of myself, I've shared something of myself. I'd like to now to ask you to share something of yourselves. You've been sat down for now an hour listening to people talk. Time for you to talk. I'd like you to turn around to somebody near to you. Now, if you've come with somebody and there's somebody you don't know, turn to the person you don't know. And I'd like you to answer this question. What changes have you seen in your role in the last couple of years? So just 2 minutes of conversation, and then we'll do a quick bit of feedback. What are the big changes? For the younger folk at the front, you can cut it down to the last 5 months. That's fast enough. All right, 2 minutes, let's go.
One of the Steves.
Pick up the first one.
Oh, for me, the biggest change for me is definitely
Okay. This may not work. I've got plastic. Oh, rather good. Okay, what do we have? Now, I'm not going to ask you to do a speech for the bride and groom. What do we have? Any thoughts on the last 5 years? Big changes. What's going on? Any thoughts?
Share more.
Share more. I like that. It's succinct, to the point. I think everyone will agree with it. We are sharing more, aren't we? Or we should share more. Which one?
We are.
We are sharing more. We are. Yeah. Go on.
I'd like to say that we were saying that there hasn't been enough change. Bearing in mind what's available to create different environments, different ways of doing things, a lot of institutions are just not doing it.
Stick around. That's what the next 25 minutes is all about. Anything else?
Less central services and support. So a lot more people using whatever Joyce is talking about.
Yeah.
Using other people's stuff.
Yep.
Why do we need IT services anymore?
Yeah, doing it quick and dirty, doing it yourself, making it happen, and actually, in many cases, completely subverting the role in the workplace of the learning and development function, because why the hell do they have to rely on L&D? They can do it themselves. Yeah, at the back.
I was just going to say the impact of the economic downturn on spaces and ways of being creative.
Yeah, yeah, and very often necessity being the mother of invention, as well as the negative side of that. Man with beard.
In the last couple of years, just the amount of money that's been poured into like EdTech and like anybody who went to school now having views on how you can use technology in education.
Yeah, because everyone went to school, so everyone's an expert, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've got a slide which is just numbers in a bit, which is all about the money pouring into EdTech, absolutely. Any other quick thoughts? Yeah. I love Steve, you've got a great audience here. It's never like this normally. Go on.
Well, Doug really is expectations.
Yeah.
I think expectations have increased in terms of there's no longer, they've gone through the roof.
From both levels. You know, learners want everything to be as quick and comprehensive as Google. Managers, the top echelons, read it in a magazine, and it's got to be like Udacity tomorrow. Wow, yeah. Go on, two here, quickly. Yeah, front.
I think sharing from outside of your organisation is fine, but I think sharing between your own department seems to be an utter nightmare. People don't want to talk to each other. You wouldn't believe you work for the same college.
Yeah.
It's like allowed to talk to them.
You're wading through treacle while the rest of the world are gazelles leaping about. Exactly, yeah.
And realising we can't have a top-down policy about everything.
No, damn it, not anymore. We can't anymore. The centre cannot hold. Things fall apart, absolutely. But there was one over here, yeah.
The gap between the technophiles and technophobes is getting bigger.
Yeah.
Ooh. Does everybody agree with that? Big gap between technophiles and technophobes?
It's not just,
lot of nods?
It's not just the technophiles and technophobes, it's the cans and cannots.
Yeah. The refuseniks. Techno-refuseniks. Yeah, and it's a fair point. And I think that's a really good point, which we're going to end with, actually. Actually, Steve, really, we could have had a whole conversation just about this, but hopefully when we have the panel, we'll pick up on some of these themes. What I want to do is just crack through some slides and try to give you what I'm thinking about, which is this big picture sounds a bit grand and self-aggrandizing, doesn't it? But try and give you a step back and a chance to, against a new background of information, reflect on some of the great stuff that's taken place at PELeCON for the past couple of days. So, we tend to think about change as being, well, it's a linear thing, slow change, fast change. In my experience working in the learning and development space, it doesn't quite work like that in the workplace. What tends to happen is actually you've got two dimensions of change. You've got how fast is the organisation changing and how fast is the learning and development department changing. And I guess in the academic space, you can form your own adaptation of this metaphor if you like, but in the academic space it may be how fast academia is responding to the outside world, or how fast what you're doing within your own institution is changing in comparison with that institution. Typically in L&D, in the top corner here we've got people who are changing really fast, both in the organisation and in the learning and development department, the training department within the organisation. Great. In that space it's risky, but it's fun. You're trying out new stuff. You have the chance to actually make some impact. That's great. That's quite a positive, fruitful place to be. Not devoid of risk, but actually, when change happens, nowhere's free of risk. There's risk everywhere on here. What about the bottom corner here? Suppose, in contrast, that slightly risky place, we're down here, and, well, we're changing slowly. We're not really keeping up, but mind you, neither is the organisation. Actually, that's quite comfortable. It's not really a bad place to be. Nobody's putting too much pressure on you. You can keep producing, in the learning and development space, in the workplace, the same old thing year after year. And that's fine until something goes wrong. And something always goes wrong. Down here is what I call the trip to comfortable extinction. It's the frog in the boiling pan of water, which adjusts itself and adjusts itself until eventually it's too hot and the thing dies. Top right-hand corner, Instagram bought last June for $1 billion. I have to remind myself that's the correct number every time I say it. $1 billion, a 12-person company by Facebook last June. Bottom left-hand corner, the inventor and proliferator of the personal photography boom of the 20th century, Kodak. The $1 brownie was their idea, and they went into administration in January 2012. They didn't change fast enough. What about the top left-hand corner? We're changing fast, we've got all the shiny things, but the institution won't keep up with us. In that case, we are the unacknowledged prophets. Why? Why won't they see? We're wailing in the wilderness. It's like Mark 6:4. A prophet is not without honour except in his own country. Everyone else can see we're great, but for goodness sake, they can't. My advice in that situation is either leave the institution or find a niche. And I've done lots of work with institutions where organisations have had, there's one or two managers who really do get it. And working with those is the right place to start. But actually, most of the people that I know in our field are down the bottom right-hand corner, where the organisation is moving fast because it has to change fast to keep up with what's going on in the world. And this may be different from the academic space. But in the world of typically private sector in particular, you've just got to keep up, you've got to change or you're going to go bust. And L&D isn't keeping up. And in that space, what's happening is that we, in my field in particular, are doing the same old thing, but other people are doing the interesting stuff, which really is learning and development. So the sales department gets out a new app for the new product which they're producing, puts it on an iPad and gets it to people, so the sales guys know about the new, I don't know, car. Now that's a L&D job, really, but the learning department is completely sidetracked, and the sales department goes straight through and does it. because the L&D department isn't fast enough on its feet. The marketing department maybe builds an external community to work with its consumers. Yeah, that's L&D, that's community. No? Marketing doing it. I see that happening again and again, and that's the area where it's the training ghetto. It's where training becomes the bit in the basement, the bit in the porter cabin on the other side of the car park where really nobody wants to go except to go and have a bit of time off, fill the heads up and then come back. And there are lots of problems with that. One problem is, of course, that when times get rough, it's the first thing to get axed because it's on nobody's radar. But a second and perhaps more important problem is that it means we're not doing our jobs properly in learning and development because we're not contributing enough. We're not contributing enough to the organisation. We're experts in how people learn, but other people are doing it because they can do it fast. As we said, quick and dirty tools, making it happen. All right, so you may say, Don, look, this is all very well, but we are skilled people. We're skilled people, we know our jobs. Whatever happens in this world of boiling water around us, we will be safe in the future. Here are some skilled people doing a very good job. My mother was a shorthand typist, worked in a typing pool, learnt how to type to Colonel Bogey. They had 50 women, and they're all women, in a room, pressing the keys in time on one of those huge Remington Silvers, massively muscular fingers she had as a result. Do these people still have a job? Are I still doing this? No. It just evaporated at some point in the 1970s, 80s. As a result of some technical changes that happened beforehand. They came together and they produced an environment where that set of skills was no longer relevant. And I think we run the risk of being in an environment where our skills are, if not no longer relevant, then at least being challenged and we have to extend them. And I think the turning point happened actually, as it did, the turning point for these guys happened perhaps 20 years earlier when certain bits of technology were invented. A quick question for you. I think we're going through a moment of change. I think there isn't sufficient change at the moment. I think it was a very good point we had earlier. A lot of change is going to be happening for us, but I think that's the result of things that happened in the past which are now coming to fruition. I have in mind a year when those things kicked off, when three things in particular kicked off. Anybody like to hazard what that year is that have brought us to the point where in 2013 we're really about to undergo some dramatic change in what we're doing? 2008. I love your definitive certainty there, Doug. You're wrong, but I like the style. 93. Any advance on 93?
95.
95. Higher, lower? Brucey missed out, didn't he, really? Lower. So I did this once, someone said 1898. I thought that was A, very specific, and B, a long, long time ago. Actually, you get the prize because it's my answer, is 1990. I mean, some things don't change. Look, the woman who would be queen, we're still obsessed with the woman who would be queen. Of course, the Beano is now online, but it's still with us. Some things don't change, though. Melody Maker, the Rolling Stones are on tour. Isn't that fantastic? They must sleep in formaldehyde or something. I don't know how they keep doing it. So, for me, 1990 is the year when things happened. And what happened? Three things happened. Here are pictures to give you a clue. What's the top one there? Anybody remember what that is?
Olympics opening.
Olympics opening? No, closing. Olympics closing. Tim Berners-Lee sent a tweet from the centre of the stadium, saying this is for everyone, bang. So what might that be referring to? Technology. That's technology. Middle one, what's this? The Berlin Wall. Now, okay, Tim Berners-Lee put forward the proposition for the World Wide Web in 1990. Berlin Wall came down in 89, but I'm sort of stretching things a bit here. We're with friends. So I'm using the Berlin Wall as the precipitating point in globalisation. So that's what that means for me. What about the last one? I tell you, I will tell you what the H stands for if you could tell me what that picture means. No, you can't.
Is it Margaret Thatcher and the poll tax and unfair society and all that kind of stuff which I've gone a bit on band about?
Minor strike. No, we've got a fantastic interactive audience. They don't mind, Steve, saying stuff that's completely wrong. It's great. I love it.
We learn by failure.
I've learned by failure. You're failing great. Keep failing. Intangible value, which I will now explain what I mean when I say that. Intangible values, what are they? If you're in an organisation, most of the value, well, you can divide the value of your organisation into tangible and intangible assets. So the tangible stuff is the stuff you can see, touch, your order book, stuff you produce, the land and so on. The intangibles, brand value, consumer loyalty, people, the skills, what they can do. Now, there's an organisation, Ocean Tomo, which monitors this very closely and has looked at the relationship between the intangible and tangible value of organisations, the S&P 500 in this case, over the past period of time. 75, more than 80% of the value of most organisations, big organisations, was tangible. You could see it, you could touch it, it was there, you could stick a price tag on it. Now, it's almost exactly flipped over. Now, we can query exactly where these numbers come from, but there's no doubt that the shift is real and it's absolutely on people's agenda, which I'll come to in a minute. The turning point of when it went from more of one to more of the other is about 1990. So again, playing a bit fast and loose with the dates there, but basically in 1990, intangibles suddenly became important. And for us, that should be great news because suddenly people become important. Because people are, apart from brand value, people are one of the most important things in their own right as an intangible asset. They're also one of the most important things in terms of making the other intangible assets get to work. Fantastic. And that's reflected in what top CEOs think. So here is the Lloyd's Risk Register for 2011. There was a one-off survey they did. They asked CEOs, 500 CEOs of very large companies, half of them had a turnover of more than $500 million, what were the things that kept them awake at night. Number 2 on the list, talent and skills shortages. That is unbelievable. When I started working as a trainer, you couldn't find anything on skills anywhere in the newspaper. Now it's in the financial pages. But do they think we can do anything about it? Here's a survey by the Economist Intelligence Unit asking, again, top CEOs, what part of their organisation is the most agile part? Which responds fastest, helps solve business problems, gets things done? Marketing, of course, sales doing very well there, 38%, 44 people rating that very highly. Training doesn't even come on there. But you can look down at HR. It's got an index value of 9. Only legal, risk and compliance are less agile than training. How bad do we have to be perceived that we are marginally better than compliance and risk? I'm not saying we're doing a bad job. I'm just saying that the people at the top don't know about it. They think that we're the people who pick people up and put them through that thing in the basement or the porter cabin and bring them back with full brains, ready to go to work, doing something they're not quite sure about. At the same time, they're really worried about the skills. There's a gap there, and it concerns me. So that's the one thing, one of the key trends I think that happened in 1990. Bang, intangibles kicked off. Second one, globalization. Map of the world, bit of a different perspective. Japanese map of the world. We are on the periphery. Not how we're used to seeing it. Of course, Britain should be at the centre. The reality is that most of the trade happens around China and India. 80% of the costumes in this year's Rio Carnival were made in China. So it's just a silly statistic that shows us that there's lots of stuff happening out there that has nothing to do with us, and it's slightly worrying. You have people, farmers from the Hindu Kush, can't find space for their cattle. They're setting up cattle farms in the Ukraine and Canada as a result. Flying around, renting land, getting to work. We live in a world where globalization has suddenly altered our lives completely. Now, yeah, that's very nice, Don. We all know it affects us quite deeply. Now, you might say, Don, what's the MOOC slide? Because you've got to have a MOOC slide, haven't you? What's the MOOC slide doing under globalization? Well, I think that's where it belongs. MOOC's been going since 2008 with Siemens and Stephen Downes. So why did they suddenly kick off last year? Anybody? Why did MOOC suddenly get...
Coursera.
Money.
Oh, there you are. There's 2 answers. Do you want to finish off the presentation? You're right. Right. Coursera and money. Bang. Suddenly, Stanford goes to Silicon Valley. VC money comes in. Bang. Front page of Time. I've never seen skills on the front page of Time. Bang, there it is, because the money's there. That's October, and Coursera got its funding at the beginning of the year in July and September. That's where that's coming from, right? But it's not just about MOOCs. So we've got Coursera, 2 million students. We've got Khan, that's just free. we've got City and Guilds and Keynote. City and Guilds is a British charity, an awarding body, buying a private sector organisation to do its job better. Pearson is a huge organisation that is setting up universities. Setting up a university in London for business studies accredited by London University. This slide is about the fact that the barriers are changing and tumbling down in our field. We're moving from a position whereby what we thought was true has suddenly become very different. And competition and alignment and alliances are being found on all sides. I've written a bit more about it. That's the short URL for the top right-hand corner. The point is that title, Cause, Effect, Sideshow, I don't think any of us really thinks MOOCs are the end story. A lot of fuss about it, a lot of noise. But the reality is, what matters about MOOCs is they're a milestone. They're a milestone in the traditional sense that, yeah, that's something important that's happened, but also in the sense that they're part of the way on the journey somewhere. We're going somewhere, and MOOCs have marked a really important point where education is being transformed. Being transformed globally, and that's the point. I know the technology is fine, I know the pedagogy may suffer, but for me it's the fact that it's suddenly an international marketplace for learning. That's why it's here. Finally, let's look at frictionless information. But Tim Berners-Lee's tweet was retweeted 10,627 times. Now, when I started doing marketing, we used to do mail shots. I can't imagine licking 10,627 stamps. Right? The sheer amount of work it took to get stuff out to people was hard work. Now, it's there instantly, and we take it for granted. And I think your quote at the end, Joyce, Gutenberg to Zuckerberg, where we underestimate technology's impact in the long term, is absolutely right here. We've totally underestimated the way that information has become frictionless. We've moved from the world where knowledge was power, because it was difficult to get hold of, to where information is free. And if our job is to provide information, then frankly, we're out of a job. Why? Because when people learn at work and elsewhere, they're not going to come to us for it. They're going to go to their other tools. Here are some people at work. Actually, this is not people at work. Not unless they work in a dentist studio. That's people at work. Every small organisation I've worked has been as messy and chaotic and as horrible as this. We've got guys with their suit. We've got a Nerf gun there. I don't know what's in this cup, but it looks like it's been there for a long time. You know, that's the reality. These guys are busy, chaotic, a lot going on. It's noisy, and they're not going to take time out to go to a course. What are they going to do? They're going to go and access their favourite tools to find out what they want to know. The favourite tool, of course, being Google. And if you are on google.com and you type in the ultimate performance support question, how to, what does it suggest as its predictive text? How to. What's the most common thing people are asking? Google.com in the US. What is it?
Leave my wife.
How to leave my wife or beat my wife? I suppose one is worse than the other.
Make money.
How to make money? No, it's how to tie a tie. Because American boys go to high school, they don't wear a tie. Suddenly they've got to go to a job interview, get their first job. How do I tie? I'm not going to ask Dad, I'm going to go to Google, find out how to tie a tie. But of course, also reflect on culture. If you type into the German one, wie kann ich, how can I? Then it says, wie kann ich schnell abnehmen? How can I lose weight quickly? But the Germans all keen on being very fit. In UK, it's how to make pancakes. So the Germans are all happy to lose their weight. We're all happy to put it on. I don't know. So we get a sense there that the technology is changing. We're doing things in ways that weren't possible, and we take it for granted. It's part of our lives. All right. What's driving all this change? Well, we've talked about some of the changes, but I think there's one thing that's behind even these three changes from 1990. Who's this guy on the right? You may recognise him. Who's that? Bill Clinton. Who's this guy here? Who?
James Carver, isn't it?
James Carville, yes. Wow. If I had a prize, you'd get it. Yeah.
Watch The Daily Show.
Okay. James Carville, who ran Clinton's campaign in 92, and he put three things up in the office. To remind everybody on the campaign team what it was about. The first one was... No, that was the second one. Okay, but that's the point of the story. The point is, it's the economy is stupid. What's driving all this stuff? Well, it's the economy. I'm not going to call you guys stupid. I think you're marvellous for simply having stayed to this point in the conference. But it is the economy that's driving it all. There's no question about it. I'm going to quickly show you some numbers, then I'm going to wrap up and get to the panel. If you missed Graham's talk yesterday after dinner, it was a cracker, and he dealt with a lot of stuff that was really important. And I'm going to actually reflect some of that on the next two slides. He vilified Sir Michael...
Michael Gove.
No. Come on. Everyone's going to vilify Michael. Barber, thank you. Who is one of the authors of this report, which is, whatever Graham might say, whatever you might think, certainly worth reading. I haven't got the URL there, but that's what it is. An avalanche is coming, March 2013, packed full of really useful information about the future of the university sector. They propose 5 models for universities. I don't necessarily know I buy into them, but there was this graph which really struck me in there that I pulled out for you. Indexed in 2000 from a point of 100, that is the growth in the cost of being at a US 4-year course. There's another line on there, isn't there? Average earnings for full-time workers with a degree. Okay, where's that line going to go, the grey line? Is it going to go higher? Are they earning more than they used to do? Or is it going to go less? Higher or lower? Lower. Yeah, no Brucey needed there. How much lower? It is, yeah, it's I did that. My wife said, "You're right." I said, "Yeah, it's all right, it's just my iPad. I've read something that shocked me," and that was it. It's just not, well, I can't say it's not, but looking at that, you would think twice about going to college. Especially when you look at the other numbers involved in the debt you're going to be saddled with. And I won't go into the whole, I'm not going to college thing and what have you, but of all of the graphs that report contains, that's the one that jumps out to me. That's what's driving some of these changes. People can do it for themselves, and yet regardless, as we noted in the comments right at the beginning, the ship of my field of learning and development and the ship of academia is chugging along going the same way. Actually demanding for perfectly legitimate reasons higher fees, even though actually the perceived value in the marketplace, which may not be all the value you get from an institution, but the perceived value is diminishing. Doug, you seem to know a lot about this stuff, so do you want to just rattle off what these numbers are?
Well, that one's your salary.
Why did I expose myself to that? One of the organisations which is responding, I was asked last night over dinner, what reaction do you think you're going to get? What have we learned, if anything, in the public sector? What can the academia learn from the private sector? I said one thing that hasn't been learned is the fact that organisations go bust when they can't turn a profit. Should universities turn a profit? I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily their role, but unfortunately it's the position they're in at the moment. Apollo, which owns the University of Phoenix, has a turnover of $4.7 billion. And University of Phoenix had more than 200 campuses worldwide, shut down something like half of those earlier this year because they weren't working. They weren't turning a profit. Now, whatever you think about that, that's the reality of a privately funded university. That's how the world is. Things not making money, they get stopped. That will not affect the profits and the turnover of Apollo Group because they're prepared to be quite clear about how they handle a spreadsheet. But that's diminished, that's dwarfed by the 9.1 billion, which is the revenues of Pearson internationally. Pearson say we own Penguin. Actually, they don't own Penguin anymore because they sold it. They own the FT, they own a bunch of stuff. They're an educational publisher, they were. They are now an absolute giant in our field. 32 billion. 32 billion. I mean, I do have to take a breath every time I say that. That is the endowment of Harvard University. Yeah, that's another intake of breath, isn't it? 6.5 billion, slightly smaller number, is the endowment of Cambridge University, which is the most heavily endowed British university. Then it's Oxford, and then everything else falls away. 1.9 billion is the learning and development space. That is the global market for learning management systems. There's a lot of money being spent on learning management systems internationally in the workplace space, not in education, just in the workplace space. And these numbers across the bottom are purchases in the last 12 to 15 months of learning management systems. So, Talio, was bought by Oracle, SuccessFactors by SAP, and Connexa bought by IBM for those numbers. Those numbers are all equal to or about the same or greater than the total value of the entire global market for learning management systems. Why would you buy one tool? Why would you buy one tool for the entire value of the global marketplace? And the answer is because you can, and because you think it's strategic, and because it makes sense financially right now. Graham pointed out last night that interest rates are historically low. They are. If you're in that position, you've got cash, you go out and you buy stuff to help yourself grow. You go out and you buy stuff in an area that looks good. Right now, education and learning, whether it's in your space or my space, looks like a hot bet. That's where this money's coming from. The question mark at the end is CertPoint Systems bought on the 1st of this month by Infor, which is the other of the big ERP providers, private VC company, so we don't know how much it was bought for. In case anybody missed it, all of these are in billions of dollars. There are some big numbers out there. How much funding did Coursera and Udacity get last year? Any idea? 25 what?
Million.
Yeah, we've got some very well-informed people here. Yeah, $15 million, which against these numbers is really chicken feed, isn't it? We haven't seen anything yet. If people want and have the money to spend on stuff, they're going to. So I think we can expect to see further change in our field. Steve, I've overshot. It's 6 minutes to. Do you want me to stop? And get straight to the panel?
Concluding statement?
Concluding statement. Concluding statement is this. What's the future? Well, the future is that barriers, of course, are falling between the field of learning development and education, certainly. We're seeing private and public sector overlapping. We're seeing increasing global competition. And we've got barriers falling between the private and public sector as well. But I think also we have to be aware of the future of barriers going up. There's going to be a sense, let's not kid ourselves that because we've got lots of friends on Facebook or LinkedIn, that we are as well connected as Guy Kawasaki. He's got his chums that he speaks to on a private back channel, and so is everybody else. And we may be out of the loop. And when I say the exclusive old boys or young man's club, and unfortunately it is largely men, what I'm talking about here is a future where somebody in Canada sets up a MOOC in 2008, keeps it chugging along very nicely, and then suddenly somebody comes in the US, well-funded, and makes something happen because they're part of the milieu where software and money meet, and they're inside, not outside that group. So I can see barriers falling, but let's not kid ourselves that it means everything's open. Does that mean the end of the world? Is this an appallingly negative point at which to leave the conference? No, it's not, because those big numbers do apply to us as much as anybody else. I really do think that actually we've got a tremendous opportunity here. I said my mum was a shorthand typist. She was, and of course she had no job when people stopped being shorthand typists. She went to a local FE college. She left school at the age of 14, had a high school leaving certificate. She got her A-levels. She went to the local university, Surrey University. She got her degree. She got a second degree. She went on to become a very successful psychologist. She lives just up the road in Exmouth now. She's retired. So if she can change from a position of having absolutely nothing, I'm sure that we can. More importantly, I think we can follow Joyce's lead in helping our colleagues at work move themselves forward. Because I think if we try and do it individually, it's not enough. But I think together we can change and meet the needs of the 21st century. Thank you very much.